Hello, everybody. This is Brendan Dessner, and welcome back to Bad Grammar. It is my very special pleasure here to be here with Frank Stascik, a good friend of mine, here in lovely Berwyn. And before we go any further, Frank, I love Berwyn. I can't really.
Owen's amazing.
I'm just being here, even very briefly. Like I've never quite lived in Berwyn
Uh-huh.
proper. I grew up in sort of like the tamer, less interesting suburbs in like Lombard, and then I was like stranded in Warrenville for a while, and then I lived in Forest Park for a while, and I really liked Forest Park. But Berwyn,
Well, first of all,
yes,
I'm amazed that you haven't uttered the traditional.
the Berwyn,
There you go.
Berwyn.
There
Well,
we
I
go.
sort of like that's why we need an audience,
Took
really,
liberty.
because we don't have. But yes,
Yes.
yeah,
Son of Svengoolie. When I was growing up in Chicago, it was one of my favorite things to watch, and so just coming out here and I mean, just being here
in the Mecca,
amazing.
in
Yeah.
the yes.
The spooky Mecca. Very cool, very cool. Well, Horribles is of course.
Of course. Well, it's home of Horribles. It's home of Fitzgerald's.
Yes, I
Which
was
is
just there
big.
last night to see Wanda Jackson. It was an amazing show.
Yes, Fitzgerald's is really nice because it's like one of the places that I can go with my parents that I actually would go there just by myself, but I can
Yeah.
also bring them, and it's just great. It's lovely.
Oh,
What else is Berwyn? It's the home of, I believe it's the home of the country's only, or like at least largest, like all-female professional wrestling concern.
you
isn't
are correct.
Yes.
Now, I don't know the details on that, but I did hear about it via our mutual friend Max Glasner,
it? Yes.
who I will probably tell a story about in a few minutes. But yeah, he's big on wrestling, and I know he related that to me at least once. It was also the home of the Spire of Cars
Which
that
is no more now.
is
They
no
got,
more.
how can they, that,
Well,
yeah.
they had to make the Walgreens had to go there is what it was.
Really?
They traded the icon of the Spire of
There-
Cars for
that's-
the icon of a
The gods are not
Walgreens.
happy with
No.
that. No.
And that's why we've had the floods recently.
Yes,
This
that's
is-
right, man.
For the first time in as in 20 years or many years that people have lived here can remember, this summer has been a summer of just ungodly basement flooding. This one that we're in had a good dose of that. I blame it on tearing the spire down.
Well, I mean, like, they'll accept, when the human sacrifice was going steadily, that was fine. And then that was the spire, and that was acceptable. And,
Well, that's what we used to
right.
do. We used to go out
Yeah.
and take people there and just like impale them upon the spire.
That was
And
my understanding,
That was
yes.
the sacrifice, and now we can't
Yeah.
do that anymore.
Berwyn is great.
Just stoning people isn't working. We thought it would, but I guess not.
Right.
It had to be the spire.
Yes. Man.
Um,
All right.
but to tell you about an
Yes.
interesting Berwyn
Mhm.
story,
Please do.
I briefly mentioned our mutual friend Max Glasner, who
Yes.
is an amazing writer.
Mhm.
Currently in Savannah, Georgia, going to school.
And
Elsewise,
he just
I'm
had,
sure
actually, I
he's a
just
writer.
read something of his in, like local Chicago magazine. I can't think. If I think of it later, I'll mention it. But anyway, yeah, Max. So
Okay.
you and Max were, yeah.
Well, one thing that we have in common is we tend to both work sort of like retail or otherwise jobs that give us off hours, not traditional 9 to 5 deals.
Mhm.
So we have lots of time available during the night, and what we both like to do is when the weather's nice out, just go out into the neighborhood and just walk around. And just kind of enjoy the night and enjoy just being outside where they're in the emptiness, in suburbs and cities that are just packed full of people. Just going out and having the entire world to yourself is just something that both of us like to do. So we decided to do like a walking night here in Berwyn
Mhm.
one night, and well, of course, being that it's me and Max, there was booze involved.
Mhm.
We both had little pints of whiskey in our pockets
Yes.
as we were walking. And one thing I would do sometimes is take my little camera phone and just take pictures of odd things that I would see, interesting shadows, or I'd bring like little crazy either figures or stuffed animals, just put them in odd places. And just
Okay.
because I'm a big nerd and goofy and
Yes.
insane. So Max says, let's amp it up. And he brings with him it was about 1.5 feet tall, rubber 2-headed baby doll.
Okay.
And one head is normal, the other's like
Did it
a
come that way, or
demon
was
head.
this like modified?
No. This
Okay.
was he bought it this way at
Okay.
was that Uncle Fun's or
All right.
I believe on the north side somewhere. And so we both have our whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
We both have our well, he has his two-headed baby doll, and we just roam for hours. I mean, we started at about I would say about 9 o'clock, and we went well through 5 a.m. Just wandering around with booze and a two-headed baby doll taking pictures. Anyway, around I want to say it's around 4 a.m. and this is a Sunday night going into a Monday now.
Mm-hmm.
4 a.m. We're walking up Oak Park Avenue, which we're not too far away from, and we're near Ogden, right on Ogden actually. And as we're waiting for the light to change, I believe at this time we're heading up Oak Park to go see the cemetery. That's at the
Okay.
end of Oak Park Avenue.
Okay.
Um, a cop car pulls up to the light and stops. And we're
Mm-hmm.
both pretty drunk right now. And Max is unfortunately, holding the baby doll so that it's facing the cop cars. And then we see the cop car, and then we kind of look at each other.
Just to clarify for a moment, is there
Yes.
like a liquor visible, or is there we
No.
have like a brown paper bag
No,
kind
no,
of
no, no, no,
situation?
no,
Or
pockets.
okay,
Pockets,
all right,
pockets.
okay.
But of course, Max sees the cop car, and I think nothing of it because, as you may know, I am Mr. Cool.
Yes.
Which I will then turn into the un-Mr. Cool in a few seconds when I talk
Mhm.
about what happens. But I'm just like, cop car, no big deal, just act natural.
Of
Max
course.
Max starts to bounce a little bit, and like turn to me, turn to the cop car, turn to me, turn to me. Oh, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Um, we decide, since we're near a gas station, well, let's just walk into the gas station like we're gonna buy something. We're just two guys out for a walk.
Right.
So we go to try to walk into the gas station, get about halfway there, realize that it is closed, and then
Mm-hmm.
can do nothing but just sort of stop, turn around, and walk back to the corner.
Right.
This sort of weird hesitation, I guess, proves a little too much for the officers.
They felt the
Yeah.
need to investigate.
So yeah, so
Okay.
we go to cross the street. The cop car cuts us off in the parking lot of a beef stand, and the officer gets out and says, "Can you put your hands on the side of the car for me?" So he does that, and he frisks us both.
Mhm.
He does find our booze.
Yeah.
Luckily, since this is Berwyn, which is an amazing town,
Yes,
as we have
Berwyn.
said, his reaction is pretty much, "I don't care if you've got booze. I just want to make sure that you're not up to no good. You know,
Mhm.
make sure you don't have guns or knives or looking to break into houses, things like that."
Mhm.
And he comments on the baby doll. He says it's not every day that you see two guys walking down the street at 4 a.m. with a baby doll,
Sure.
which is understandable.
Yeah.
And then this is where I turn from Mr. Smooth and Cool into Mr. I've had a little too much to drink and don't quite know what I'm saying.
Right.
Because in an effort to explain the situation to the officer, now, and you have to keep in mind that in my head,
Right.
this made perfect sense.
Of course.
This was going to be the thing to say that was going to explain everything. What I say to the officer is, "Officer, we just like to take pictures." Do you want to see him? At which point he does give me a look and says, "No, I do not." Part of it is Mr. Max Glasner does have quite an amazing handlebar mustache and leather jacket.
He does. I'd like to second that for the folks at home. That
Yes.
this is coming together in my mind, at
Yes.
least.
It was amazing. And then after we left, I was talking about how cool the officer was, how
Mhm.
it was just really good. They, didn't give us any hassle. He wasn't a bastard. He was a good guy. Just
Yeah.
making sure we weren't doing anything we shouldn't have been. And Max was a little hesitant. And it turns out just a little bit after they left, he started asking me about my frisk, and I said, no, it's just a regular frisk. And he is a little convinced that the officer took
Whoa.
a little more time than necessary
Oh,
in
goodness.
certain areas.
Wow.
Which was upon the officer's insistence that he had to make sure that there was nothing that was going to stab him or cut him in
Okay,
any way.
but that there was a distinction between yourself and Mr. Glasner.
There
as
was a
far as-
distinction because I didn't notice anything. If I would have noticed anything different, I would have tipped him $5.
Okay,
But
right.
I
Yes.
did not.
Wow.
That was So just be careful, folks. If you're coming to Berwyn,
Berwyn.
and you want to really
I want to
partake
raise children in this town.
of
I
the
just
Berwyn
like
Frisk.
really, I can't.
Yeah.
Yes.
4 a.m. Sundays, baby doll, and just be ready for some fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Frank.
No problem.
That's okay. All right. Here's the thing, Frank.
Yeah.
We met originally, and part of the point of Yonder podcast
Yes.
here is to sort of explore the kind of the weird corners of the literary community in lovely
Yes,
Chicago that's centered around me. So
Nice.
yeah, so I met Frank. I met you, Frank, at the late lamented Kate the Great's
Kate
bookstore.
the Great's. That was an amazing
Yes,
place.
which was, as I believe the title was, managed by Katie Redding, and also, and then which had frequent, really wonderful literary and theatrical events managed by Claire Cooney, who's also
yes.
a good friend of both of ours. Who I think I'll probably have to blackmail her somehow in order to get on this thing at some point. But
you
it'll
need
happen.
to.
I need somehow it'll happen. I don't. It hasn't happened yet. I
Okay.
need to employ some kind of leverage. I think because I believe she's hesitant, but she's amazing. Yeah, but she's amazing. It's
delightful.
Yes, wonderful,
and an amazing writer,
and ridiculously talented.
Oh my
It
God.
kind of sucks. Okay, anyway,
I want to strangle her sometimes. Strangle the words
it's
out of
just
her.
like I don't know. Right.
It would be a strangling of love.
Yes.
Kind of like the Berwyn Frisk.
Absolutely.
But
It
with
was
a
just like you
strangle.
want to give her the Berwyn Frisk, you say.
Berwyn Frisk around the windpipe.
Yes. Okay.
That's what I do.
Anyway, and I met Claire at Twilight Tales that I've talked about, and then Claire and Katie both said, you should come to Kate the Great. So I came to Kate the Greats, and who are all these wonderful people, and Frank was one of those people, and I kept seeing him reading, and
I'll second the fact that I am wonderful.
yes, Frank's pretty cool. And which sort of brings me to the question, because even though at this point I've seen you at Twilight Tales.
Yeah.
Now the Twilight Tales is up and running again,
Yes.
which is cool. And I've seen you at Top Shelf Books in Palatine.
Oh yeah,
which is sort of the sort of kind of like lower key resurgence of Kate the Greats, where they also do have the readings there, and I do stuff there, and Frank has been there, and it's a wonderful place to go. All the folks at home. And I keep seeing, so I've met Frank many times, but I don't actually know a whole lot about Frank because I know that he seems to, Frank, you seem to have been circled around these sort of Columbia
Yes.
creative writing major axis.
yes.
Were you one yourself?
I was not. I
were
did
not.
attend.
Okay.
I attended Columbia College very briefly for about 3 semesters back in the early '90s.
Okay.
I believe I took fiction writing 1, but at the time I was mainly a film major.
Mm-hmm.
So I went there for a few semesters. Got to the point where I just simply, even with financial aid, I really couldn't afford it anymore. I then took a job, full-time job, in order to pay off what I needed to pay off, and just sort of never really got back to it.
Right.
And then,
And is that where you met the crew, or was that later?
No. This was much later. What
Okay.
happened was I ended up getting married, and when that lasted for about 7 years, and when that sort of fell apart, I suddenly kind of found myself in sort of amidst a sea of I don't know what to do now.
Yeah, right.
Who am I? What's important to me? What's my next step? Because it was very much a marriage of me being committed to providing a life for the wife and her family, and that was my focus for about 7 years, and then suddenly I had no more focus.
Okay.
What happened then is I got a job working in Schaumburg at a Walden Books, and I met our mutual friend Patty Templeton.
Okay, all right,
Yes.
yes.
She was a coworker, and
Okay.
what she did is she was just finishing out her run at Columbia. And she had a final project, which was a horror, Christmas-themed horror zine that she was collaborating on with Max Glasner, of all
Max
people.
Glasner, okay.
Prior to me meeting him, and she'd heard that I was that I had done some writing in the past, and that I kind of enjoyed it, but that I hadn't done it for a long time.
Right.
And she asked if I would just write something for this zine she was doing, and I did. And it sort of got my juices flowing again. So she started inviting me to all these Kate the Great's readings.
Okay.
And I started to pick up there. She introduced me to Max. She introduced me to a ton of people.
Right.
And so I really have her to thank for not only introducing me to a ton of people, but for sort of getting my passion for writing back up again.
Going again.
And that's where I sort of started to go off on my own. My one difference that I have from a lot of these folks, though, is that most of the writers that I associate with are really looking to write as a career.
Hmm.
And I am not necessarily doing that.
Okay.
I mean, my
Are you just not interested in it at all, or like if
I
it
mean, it's
happens?
not
Or...
like I would. It's not like
Yeah.
I would throw it out
Sure.
the window
Yeah.
if it were to happen. But it's
Hmm.
not my focus.
Right.
It's something that I do for fun.
Hmm.
It's something that I write stories that I don't see or that I don't read that I would like to see, but I haven't seen them, or I haven't seen this particular style that I try to use,
Hmm.
be it successfully or unsuccessfully.
Right.
I'm basically writing what I would like to read. And I use my friends in my writing. You know, I
Hmm.
reference things that are in jokes and stuff like that. And it's mainly so that I just get a kick out of it.
Right.
And if it becomes something that's successful, well, then it
Hmm.
becomes successful. But I mean, my main goal is really to open my own horror themed used bookstore.
Okay.
Focus on that one genre, because as
All
somebody
right.
who's worked in the book business for over 10 years,
Hmm.
um, I truly believe the only way that you can run a successful used bookstore in today's market is to,
To have a niche,
yeah,
or to
focus on
be
a genre. Yes,
right, to draw people to it for some reason other than
exactly.
yes. Okay.
Exactly. I think it's. I mean, it's a very tough market out there, and that's really, I think, the only way that you can survive. And then you look at stores like Horribles, which we
Hmm.
mentioned briefly, which is a horror-based store,
Right.
but a frankly higher end horror-based store. I mean,
Hmm.
they deal in collectibles.
Yeah, that's like the people that like. I mean, even though Horribles is great and it's a wonderful place to go hang out, but it's like like 250 like on the low
Yes,
end, like
yes, and of course, I
reproductions
mean,
of Pinhead or something.
yeah,
It's
I
yeah.
mean, and it's true. I don't want to paint a picture that that's all they have, because
No,
of
no,
course
that's
you can
yeah.
go in there and you can buy things for a couple of bucks. True, but their bread and butter is in sought after collectibles.
Hmm.
And my sort of envisioning has always been a store where horror fans can go, and they can come in with $10 and leave with a couple of things.
Right.
Where it's not do the collectibles, but do mainly horror music, horror books, maybe a few posters. But of course,
Hmm.
I'm not going to try to infringe upon the wonderful Horribles
Right.
territory, because
Yeah.
first of all, that's a bad idea, and
They,
second of all, I love those guys. It's a wonderful place, and I would never want to do something in the Chicago area that would in any way be competitive with them.
right.
I would want to be more of a um,
It's another thing. It's
something
part of the same scene,
yeah, it's part of the
but
same scene, but doing
yeah.
something different. Just because they're really, there's enough support here to support one.
Yeah.
There's not enough support there's not enough of a fan base to support any sort of head-to-head competition.
Right.
So nobody has to worry about anything like that.
Yeah.
But so the writing I just do, in my spare time, and I do for fun, and
Hmm.
I'll go.
Do
into
you
meetings.
submit to magazines, or do you try to get it out? Or
I go through periods where I do.
uh-huh.
If I feel something is worthy, but a big part of it is that what I started to do when I started writing up again is I did a variety of short stories, and then kind of it was pointed out to me by either Patty or Claire or both that all my stories could technically be part of the same universe, part of the same sort of sphere
Hmm.
of action, and so it sort of dawned on me that that was true, and what I then decided to do was sort of pull them all together
Okay.
into a novel.
Right.
And so I have actually most of the time that I'm spending now in writing is on this sort of this novel. That
Hmm.
is first of all a pulling together of my various short stories, but then also with the padded out and interwoven together with stuff to sort of bring it all together.
Okay.
And so it's been a while since I wrote a standalone short story
It's because you've been working on
this.
this.
On
Yeah.
which, and to be honest though, a lot of these stories, like what I'm going to read in a little bit, was that first story that I wrote for Max and Patty
Hmm.
for their horror e-zine.
Right.
But then what I did was I just added to it a little bit to make it part of the bigger world. And that's the version I'm going to be reading that's slightly bigger. So there's a few references in it to stuff that is going on in the novel, or that is going on here. But what it basically is it's a chapter that is we have introduced this character. It's a good let's go see how this character became this character,
Okay.
and then it's sort of a standalone bit of it, because it's just this character's backstory,
Right.
which was originally written just as a completely separate
Was its
short
own
story.
thing, and that's what
Yeah.
we're going to be hearing.
That's gonna be here in a little bit.
In
Yeah,
a bit. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool, man.
but yeah, so I'm very excited.
Cool. See, these are things I did not know, so that's it's a part of the fun of doing this. So yeah,
I know something else about me that will
Right.
influence my writing. I really don't see myself writing anything other than horror. I mean, I really am a horror writer at heart, and I love
Right.
the genre.
Yeah.
And that's not to say I never will write anything else, but I
see enough to keep you busy.
Oh, I love
in
it.
there.
I just
Yeah.
love it, and I am definitely one of those authors who really embraces the genre. I don't shy away from it. I do tend to be very upset with authors who shy away from genre. When their books are clearly headed in that direction, and then they sort of pull out at the last minute and say, no, this is not a genre
take me
novel.
seriously.
This is serious literature.
Yeah.
My favorite would be the perennial favorite, House of Leaves.
Okay.
Which
is a great. Well, I mean, you have about to express an opinion, which I think is a really cool book, but it's like,
here's my opinion.
Okay, all right.
I like the book.
Okay.
I am not going to say it is a bad book, because
Yeah.
it is not a bad book.
Right.
What did make me mad about the book was at the end of it, when the narrator says, you'll find this book in the horror section of a store probably, but it doesn't really belong there. And it was just sort of like, really, come on.
Yeah. Okay. I'll
throw your arms around it.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Right.
But my style comes from really a big part of it is the music that I listen to, which is sort of psychobilly and horror punk, which is, I mean, metal is a big horror genre as well, but I've never been able to get into metal because it's so dour and dark, and
Right.
my stories, like the music I listen to, tends to be bouncy, fun, full of gruesome imagery.
Yeah.
Yes. But there's always an edge of humor to it. There's always a lightheartedness. There's always sort of that, Night of the Creeps, Monster Squad sort of vibe, where it's okay to be goofy, and it's okay to be fun, at the same time talking about child murder and rape and things like that.
And different
horrible things. I am not. I love the fun of horror, and part of that is too is knowing my limitations. I know that I can't scare anybody. I can't write anything that is going to scare anybody, because I just don't have that in me. But what I can do is I can write about horrifying stuff and make it kind of fun.
So it's like taboo things, but be more comfortable with it.
So that you have a room full of people laughing over child murders and things like that. Because it's all sort of basically it's told in a style that it makes it okay to sort of just have fun with it, like an old fashioned monster movie, but with blood and gore and sex and lots of swearing and all the bad things, lots of inappropriate behavior.
Of course, terrible things.
I am the captain of inappropriate behavior. You ever see me out at a bar? I will be glad to show you some inappropriate behavior.
Wonderful. All right, man. Well, how about let's do this? Okay.
All right. I'm gonna give you a little bit of a backstory. As I said, this was originally a standalone story, so there's not a whole lot that you need to know.
Right.
There are a couple of references to other characters, especially near the end. That events that are going on, but you don't really have to dwell upon those. This will pretty much stand by itself, and basically what you've got is, in this novel that I'm doing, one of the main villains is a character named Bunky Carroll, Bunky, Bunky Carroll, a 30-something mother who is a little bit more than a 30-something mother.
Gotcha.
And where this actually came to me is to show some horror movie love. In I believe it was 80 or 81, somewhere around there was a slasher movie called Alone in the Dark, starring Jack Palance and Martin Landau, and the guy who played Murdoch on the A-Team.
Okay.
and there was a babysitter named Bunky. Bunky, unfortunately, does not make it through.
The film.
Does not. Yeah, she doesn't make
Yeah.
it through Alone in the Dark alive. But I had always wondered. I love Bunky. That's just a funny name. What would have happened to Bunky if she would not? If she would have made it through the movie,
Right.
you know, what would have become of her? And I just
Mhm.
sort of picked it up from there and sort of wrote her into this original story.
Okay.
And the greater novel, you just kind of meet her right before this bit,
Mhm.
and you find out that she is pretty much crazy and a killer.
Okay.
And this is sort of let's go back and let's see how she became
How
that.
Bunky got to this point.
How Bunky got to this. So,
All right.
by the way, if you don't already do this, your podcast will need the explicit tag for this.
It's sort of.
Is it a given?
I sure hope so. I mean, I work in a school, so I like. Hopefully, it's. I try not to make the packaging too exciting, so hopefully everyone going to it already knows what they're getting, and it's not too many sparkling lights. But okay,
all right, we're gonna do it.
Go.
All right. Well, I actually forget what the original title was. Now it's part of the novel; it doesn't have a title.
Okay.
So I think it was something like Christmas something. We'll see.
Okay.
Anyway, it's Bunky's story. Here we go. That's right. Bunky's a psycho. Sounds like a Ramon song, but it's the God's honest truth. Thing is, Bunky's not just a psycho. Oh no, Bunky is so much more. Tell you what, let's take a break. Let's leave Maddie and Penny blissfully unaware of the danger standing above them with the perfect teeth and the hair and the boobs, just for a little bit. And let's explore the singularity that is Bunky Carroll. Because, as we know, all big shit starts small. So let's find his phone booth. That's a lot bigger on the inside than it should be. Set the dial for 18 years ago and watch this bitch get born. Hey look, we're in a shopping mall. There's our girl, surrounded by a gaggle of whining brats. She's doughier, this younger Bunky, chubbier than the Bunky of today, and a little shorter. Oh, she's still a cutie, this one, but she looks worn out, haggard. Let's find out why. Now this Bunky Carroll can still vaguely recall a time when beating the ever-loving shit out of her children was something she would never have considered doing, especially in public. She can't place a precise moment in her mind's eye, only that it had been after Robbie Jr. and Randy had been born, but before Roland, Rena, Reggie, and Rebecca. It had definitely been before she realized that she hated her life, hated her role as Robbie Sr.'s glorified baby factory. It had been before the pills that wouldn't stay down, before the razor blades that hurt too much to go deep enough, and most definitely before the time she discovered that if you're going to close the garage door, stuff the tailpipe of your car with an oily rag, and let the engine run until the sweet angel of heaven came to take you away from your shit-stained, semen-ingesting existence, then you should at least have the goddamn sense to make sure that the back passenger window isn't rolled down. Because if it is, then instead of heaven, all you get is a week in the hospital, a brand new facial tick, and the ability to taste the color yellow. Our little Bunks is contemplating this while standing in the middle of Shepperton Mall on Christmas Eve with a fistful of little Reggie's blonde, curly hair in one of her hands, the other still stinging from the impact of her palm on baby Reg's reddening cheek. In the background, the dime store Santa impersonator is still trying to squeeze Reggie's piss out of his red velvet pants and shooting Bunky a look, the I'm not getting paid nearly enough to deal with your unholy brood look. The rest of Bunky's kids are watching her, not with horror, but instead with a look of collective boredom, which infuriates the shit out of her. Bunky lets go of Reggie's hair, looks at the tired faces surrounding her, and announces, "Okay, one more stop and we're done. We're going now." She turns and takes a few short steps to the nearest escalator. And it's obvious that she doesn't care if any of her progeny follow. She's as focused on getting out of the mall before she murders someone. That's kind of funny, actually. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The Beyond is a strange name for a collectibles store. Bunky pauses at the entrance and scoffs, as she has for the past 7 years. She figures that anyone who purchases porcelain gnomes and pewter dragons must be beyond any hope of amounting to anything other than a lonely mama's boy, and maybe that's how the place got its name. But then again, she is going into the Beyond for her hubby's Christmas present, and since Robbie Sr. had somehow managed to charm her into what was most assuredly the final ring of a flaming suburban hell, who was she to criticize? Bunky isn't surprised to see that the store is full, last-minute shopping being as popular as ever. Yet, hang on a second. That's odd. There's an open spot at the end of the main counter. A man is standing behind it. Amongst the angry horde, he seems serene. He almost seems to be waiting for something. The throng of jostling customers crowding the front of the store ignores him completely as they shout questions at the rest of the staff. Why, I do believe there's a sudden twinkle in Bunky's eye. Oh, yeah, a definite glimmer. I think she finds the man attractive in a 1940s Clark Gable sort of way. His short black hair is wavy and greased back. His eyes are dark and clear. Bunky straightens her shoulders, sucks in her stomach as best she can, and steps up to the counter. The man immediately smiles at her, and oh my, Bunky's suddenly in high school again. Now, she knows that she's still damn attractive, even with 6 pregnancies worth of flab gathered around her midsection, but the way the clerk smiles at her makes her feel it in a way she has forgotten about. Barely 30, and already she's forgotten lust? Well, Robbie Sr. isn't big on lust. May I help you? The man asks, his voice oiled leather. I hope so, answers Bunky. Listen to her voice catch in her throat. She's feeling warm now. She shifts her weight under the clerk's gaze, and when her thighs rub together, it's the 4th of July. She continues, I saw the open spot here, and I wasn't sure if you were helping customers, or maybe you're on break or something. Everyone else is being torn to pieces, but nobody's bothering you. She looks at the name tag pinned to his shirt. It reads, Bob Lyle, seasonal associate. Bob laughs. It isn't a loud laugh, but the boy's got some bass. It vibrates Bunky's bones, and now she's feeling warmer. Bob says, how very kind of you, miss, to inquire as to my break status instead of simply assuming. May I just say that it's quite refreshing to see such thoughtfulness in the midst of the panicked haze that has descended upon this shopping center. Really, I thank you very much. Okay, so I got suspicious as soon as the phrase inquire as to my break status flopped out of the guy's mouth. Too bad our Bunks is too busy getting all damp in her woman parts to spot trouble. Instead, she raises a hand and flaps it at him in what could be described as a completely uncoordinated display of pshawing. Well, she begins, but Bob stops her with a flashed palm. No, he says, it's true. As to the reason I am left unmolested by the masses, well, I am only here on temporary assignment. Christmas help, as it were. As such, I have been put in charge of the Candy Cane Falls Christmas Town collection. It is my sole responsibility. The store management feels it expedites the service for customers looking for specific pieces, and it saves training time, since I don't have to learn the entire store for a position I'll only hold for a few weeks. Now tell me, he leans in closer, are you interested in something from the Candy Cane Falls collection? Bunky shoots him her $1 million smile, which is actually Robbie Sr.'s $200,000 smile, if we're being technical about it. Why, yes. As a matter of fact, I am. Every year I stop in and buy a few pieces for my husband. He's positively fanatical about his village. He pulls all of the furniture out of our entrance room every year and sets up an elaborate display. This is true. It's an abrasive, hideous sight, much like Robbie Sr. Bob places his palms on the counter and leans in closer still. Bunky can smell a musky scent on him that makes her knees shake. Really, Bob says. Now that does sound impressive. Do go on. Well, he once commissioned a local artist to draw a detailed map of his town. He keeps it in a frame above the fireplace all year round. This is also true. Once, Robbie Sr. got drunk, took it down, and masturbated onto its glass surface. I won't go into what he was imagining as he shot his load. I'll only say that if there is indeed a Candy Cane Falls Christmas town somewhere in this vast universe, the inhabitants would do best to shoot Robbie Sr. dead should he come within a mile of the place. My, Bob says, your husband sounds quite the complex, refined gentleman. He's an investment banker, says Bunky, as if that explains something. Look, I know it's late in the season, so I brought a list of several pieces. If you have any 3 of them, I'll buy them on the spot. She digs through her purse and pulls out a small square of folded notepaper, which she hands to Bob. Suddenly, there's a tug at the back of Bunky's coat. She turns to find 10-year-old Roland sniffling behind her. He glances at Bob, then announces in a much louder voice than is really necessary, Mom, Randy called me an elf fucker. This is when a very busy mall store, jam-packed to nearly busting on Christmas Eve, goes dead silent in the space of a second. As for Bunky, well, she has some difficulty breathing for a few minutes. Blood rushes to her head, turns her face all purple. Embarrassment gets all snug inside her chest and says, "Hey, how you doing?" to her rapidly shriveling heart. Her mouth turns into the engine of a small airplane. There's quite a bit of sputtering. Then, as the awkward moment reaches its crowning silent glory, her monstrous brood realize that they are the center of attention, and oh dear, that isn't a good thing. They giggle. Their faces change. No longer bored, oh no. Their boredom has turned into wonder, an evil, maleficent wonder. Collectively, they sigh. And then Robbie Jr. snickers and kicks the leg of a display table located to his immediate left. On top of the table is a snowman. The snowman is 3 feet tall and made of faceted glass. In the silence of the store, the crash is deafening. The snowman's crystal carrot nose bounces up and, blunt end, thankfully, hits tiny Rena in the eye. She yelps, slaps a palm to her face, and then staggers first into a wall and then out the door where she is immediately swept up in the crush of mall traffic. Bunky finds her voice. "Get your fucking asses out of this store right now," she screams. "Find your sister. Wait by the goddamn stairs." The kids laugh and push each other out of the store, and Bunky realizes that she is now the center of attention. She pivots to an elderly woman who is standing beside her with a raised eyebrow and a most disapproving look on her wrinkled face. Bunky's voice becomes a scary, steady whisper, and in it we finally glimpse the shape of things to come. "You look like you're about to say something, Grandma." The old woman huffs. Around them, the store as a whole decides the incident is over, and frantic clamoring for sales help erupts once more. Bunky turns to Bob. Strangely, Bob has his arms spread wide across the countertop between them and is smiling at Bunky as if nothing awkward has just transpired. It's a little creepy, but Bunks doesn't notice. "Oh, don't you worry your pretty little head about the mess," Bob says. "We lose about 10 of those a year." He pauses. "Or so I hear." Bob lifts a paper shopping bag from behind the counter and sets it in front of Bunky. "Here," he says. "I found 3 pieces that I believe will be perfect for your husband. 2 are from the list, but the 3rd is a new addition this year. I think it will suit you wonderfully." Bunky is at a loss. She's still calming down from her outburst, but still trying to swallow her anger and embarrassment. And when had Bob left to retrieve her items? She isn't quite clear on that. But the way he stares at her, his eyes glistening, poring over her, she can practically see the smoke rising from his crotch. So she fans herself with one hand. Yes, that's great. Thank you very much." She gives Bob her credit card, and as it processes, he sets a small postcard and pen in front of her and lightly brushes her hand with his fingers. "Please leave your name, number, and address on this card, miss. The company has a beautiful catalog. We send it out each year. Since your husband is such an avid collector, I believe the exquisite full-color photographs will be most useful in helping him decide which pieces to acquire next." Bunky spent much of her late teen years fishing for bigwigs and loud sports bars, so she knows there isn't any damn catalog. She's just hoping he calls her sooner rather than later. He takes the card from her and slowly, deliberately tucks it into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. Then he hands her a receipt and pushes the bag towards her. "Thank you so very much for shopping with the Beyond this holiday season." He nods his head and grins at Bunky. "I do so hope I have the pleasure of assisting you again soon." 5 hours later, Bunky is wrapping presents in her kitchen when she realizes she only has 2 village pieces. "Goddamn 3rd one must have fallen out in the car," she mutters. The phone rings. Bunky waits for someone else to pick it up because, after all, there's only 7 other people in the goddamn house. But everyone else is gathered in the living room sorting out decorations for the obnoxiously large tree Robbie Sr. brings home each year. She tosses a half-wrapped Candy Cane Falls firehouse onto the table and grabs the phone. "Hello," she breathes, trying to keep her voice even. "Oh, hello." The voice fills her head. It coils around her brain, buzzes warmly. Her heartbeat kicks up a notch, and she can feel her cheeks flushing. She knows who's on the other end of the line. Is this Bunky Carroll? The voice continues. The words seep through the phone, spill into her ear, become a hot caress that runs down the side of her face. Yes, she whispers. Yes, it is. This is Bob Lyle calling from the beyond. Oh, Mr. Lyle, she says, what a pleasant surprise. I'm very pleased to hear from you. I mean, it's very pleasing to hear from you. That is to say, Bob Lyle cuts her off before she can further embarrass herself. Mrs. Carroll, Bunky, I'm terribly sorry to bother you, especially on Christmas Eve, but it appears you left your credit card here at the store. I retrieved your phone number from the catalog card you filled out and felt it would be best to ring you right up. I hope you don't mind. Now, normally we'd have no problem holding your credit card until you had the opportunity to squeeze an ample amount of time from your busy schedule to get this all taken care of. But I thought you might want to get your hands on it for some last-minute holiday shopping. If you hurried, I'd love to be able to just give it to you this evening. See, it's the subtlety that makes the ladies swoon. But Bunks doesn't give a fuck that Bob Lyle is being a blatant, obvious horn dog. All she cares about is the unmistakable invitation in Bob's last few words. I'm on my way, she practically shouts. She clicks the phone off and pulls on her coat. Be right back, she yells to Robbie Sr. as she zips out the door. Imagine her surprise when she arrives at the Shepperton Mall and finds that it has been closed for hours. First, we get Disbelieving Bunky. Disbelieving Bunky likes to repeatedly pull on doors that are clearly locked. Next, we get Confused Bunky. Confused Bunky likes to stand in the snow with her mouth open and eyebrows crinkled. Finally, we get Angry Bunky. Angry Bunky likes to yell obscenities and throw chunks of ice at glass doors until mall security guards chase her away. Hurt and disappointed, she gets back into her car and speeds through the Shepperton Mall parking lot. She hits a curve too sharply and her car slides. Luckily for her, the lot is nearly empty. The brakes catch and her car rocks to a stop. Something bumps against her foot. She reaches down and finds a box. She picks it up and reads the label. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this is where things change. This is the turning point. Up until now, we've had love-struck teens, a vicious mongrel mutt, a failed cannibal, a gal with daddy issues and a penchant for gunplay. Hell, we've even had Bunky Carroll, psycho killer at large. But this is different. This is a detour from which we will not return. This is where the trumpets sound, dear friends, and steel bars begin to fall away, clanging loudly to the ground. This is where, instead of scales lifting from eyes, we have a black, oily curtain that creeps slowly upward. Gloriously ascending, it drips shit and bile onto the dirt as it rises. From here on out, kids, this is a different story. Penny and Maddie are going to discover it soon, too. We're just getting there a little ahead of them is all. Ready? The typeface on the label reads, Candy Cane Falls Special Edition, Bunky. What else can our girl do? She pops it open, reaches inside, pulls out the small porcelain building. It feels warm, sticky, slimy. She marvels at the detail. But for one small exception, it is an exact miniature of her house. The one small exception? All the windows are tinted red. Something awakens in the pit of Bunky's stomach. A feeling. It's something she's felt before, but at the moment she can't put a name to it. So she floors the gas pedal. Her tires spin, then grab hold of the snow and launch her forward. She speeds down street after street, each deserted and abandoned to the holiday. She barely touches the brake again until she slides into her driveway. The windows of her home are cast in a reddish hue. The familiar feeling in her stomach leaps up into her throat and she nearly gags. She knows this feeling, but at the same time, it is alien to her. She marches unsteadily up her front steps and pauses at the door. The feeling in her throat leaps upward to her eyes. It coils around her body, craving recognition. She opens the door and steps inside. Bob Lyle is waiting for her. He is naked and covered in blood. He is also shaking chunks of gore off of the blade of a large dagger. His name tag is pinned to the flesh of his chest, but it's smeared with a thumbprint of blood so that only the B and the Lyle are visible. "Why, Bunky," he says in a voice that hisses and shakes the ground under her feet, "you arrived just in time." The words that spill from his mouth slip under her clothes. They pulse and throb and slide inside her, filling her with a hot buzzing that, despite her horror, sends her hands roaming, exploring, squeezing. She gasps and moans, and then she sees the tree. Bob gives her a smirk. "I'm almost finished decorating," he says. "I hope you don't mind, but I had to open my presents to get the job done." Amongst the buzzing of flies, her children lay dead under the huge tree. Their bodies are slit open, their glazed eyes staring up into the branches. Bunky tracks upward, and she can see that all of the garland and ornaments have been removed and have been replaced with ropes of slimy intestines and dripping, hooked-pierced organs. "I think it looks so much better this way, don't you think?" asks Bob. "But don't worry, I saved the best for last. For you, Bunky. And I think we can do much better than a boring old star at the top. Don't you, my sweet, sweet meat?" He strides towards Bunky, and with one hand he lifts her off her feet and kisses her deep. His tongue pushes into her mouth and slithers down her throat. The lust is overpowering. Bunky grabs his blood-streaked hair and tries to jam his tongue even farther inside her mouth. She rips at the clothes on her body as Bob lowers her and pulls away. He stares into her eyes, and she can see his pupils have turned into huge yellow slits. He smiles, and his teeth have extended. They become gleaming needles, dripping poison. His tongue flicks out and licks her cheek. He chuckles, and it sounds like a rattle. Then he gives her the knife and steps to the side, bowing and extending an arm as if to present something to her. Bunky moves past Bob Lyle. Robbie Sr. is tied up in the corner of the room. He is also naked, but appears otherwise unharmed. Bunky looks at him, then at her children, and then over at Bob Lyle. The feeling behind her eyes sings and leaps up into her brain. Everything goes white, and when she comes back, Bunky knows. The feeling, she finally recognizes it. She embraces it. For the first time in a very long time, Bunky Carroll feels joy. Across the room, Bob Lyle sheds his mask completely, and when he laughs, the windows shatter and the foundation groans. Bunky drops to her knees in front of Robbie Sr. As he sobs and pleads with her through his gag, she lifts his flaccid penis, places the knife at its base, and slowly pulls the blade across. There you go.
Thank you so much, Frank. That was beautiful. That was great. That was really cool. Okay, so if you are interested in getting yourself a little more Frank Stascik, Facebook is the advised way of going about doing that?
Is the advised way. You can look me up. Frank, last name is Stascik. Just find me there and be my friend. I need lots of friends.
Well, thank you, my friend, because it's been a wonderful. So it's been a magical afternoon here in Berwyn. That was great. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Bad Grammar is released according to a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial 3.0 unported license. You can get the new Bad Grammar at iTunes and in the listen section of Brendan Dessner Online the first week of every month. If you'd like to support Bad Grammar, thank you very much. We're good, but we would encourage you, if you're feeling generous, to go ahead and check out www.protect.org to learn more about a cause that we wholeheartedly support. Our theme music is lovingly provided to us by the Gotsicles. You can find out more about the Gotsicles over at www.gotsicles.com. And that is it. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you here next month.